So, Kenneth trained as an engineer and then later he retrained to become a computer programmer and was employed by a couple of software companies. Whilst working for one of those companies, he was able to travel extensively and indulge his passion for history by visiting many historical sites and experiencing many different cultures. In recent years, he has retrained to become a counselor and hypnotherapist and is currently volunteering as an addiction clinic. Disclaimer: any of the guidance offered by the podcast host, myself, or the podcast guests is our own guidance. We are not liable for any of the actions the podcast listener decides to do. Kenneth, welcome to the show today. Glad to have you on.
Thank you very much, sir.
That sounds like quite a bit of a mix of different things you've got going on. So love what you've got. You went from being an engineer to software, and now you're writing your novel. You've written your novel, and you're also like doing many other things. I'd love to hear kind of what got you into like writing a novel in the first place. What made you have the decision to start, writing your novel?
Well, to be honest, it was a bit of a distraction for me, really, because I'd spent years studying the counselling, psychotherapy, all that kind of thing, and I think I got to a bit of saturation point. So I think maybe I was using it as a bit of therapy myself, just to do something different. And historical fiction is the kind of genre that I like to read, always have done. And I thought, well, have a go. And as I started writing it, I was quite surprised when I was reading it back. I thought, it doesn't sound bad. So I tried to engage some friends and family to start reading. But unfortunately, I don't know a lot of people that read much anymore. So I come up a bit fruitless. Yeah, I probably, and didn't get much feedback. So I thought, I know, I'll send it to a couple of publishers, see if they're reading me, if it's any good or not. I mean, I was quite okay if they turned around and said it was rubbish. I was attempting everything, but I got quite a positive feedback, and I thought, why not? But I think the thing I really enjoyed is the fact that I didn't know where the story was going to go. I started out with a very simple timeline, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But because I didn't know much about the Civil War, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to research and fill in that knowledge. And I found out so much I didn't know, about that time period, about a lot of the characters that you never get to hear about, really. So, and all of these, so as I said, so it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, because I wanted to include those details that people didn't really know, about how the war really started years before the actual declaration of war, the shift in political situation that arrived at that a point in time, that crossroads where it was either war or not. People knew for years before that it was inevitable, that the war was going to happen. And so the early part of the novel was about the preparations of people that could see the future, know that it was inevitable and start making preparations. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Sounds like you got to research and learn a lot as you sort of wrote.
Yeah, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I chose the English Civil War, because, although I know the main characters and the main events, I didn't have that grounding, that and that's the way I like to do history, a broad range, and then the specific events make sense then, whereas if, the old way of teaching history, names and dates and kings and battles doesn't really do it for me. I like the full experience, if you like. So I thought by choosing something I didn't know much about, I could actually delve deep during the research just to fill that gap in my knowledge, if you like. But like I say, what I found absolutely fascinating. Like, you know,
Hmm. That's really interesting because often people, I could really like that perspective as well, because often people will go for um, something they're familiar with, whilst you've kind of not done that. You've done the opposite, and you're like learning, and you've been filling in that knowledge as you've been writing and really getting to research that.
yeah, I think maybe that was because I didn't have any thoughts about publishing it or anything. It was just gave me a reason to do the research, if you know what I mean. And writing the book gave me the research to do that, you know, the urge to do the research, you know. But, you know, now at, at the moment, that period of time is just fascinating to me, you know.
Hmm. Got you. Yeah. How was the writing process for you as well? Like, did you find you were the type of writer who was able to like sit down in long chunks, or did you have to do little bits each day? I'd love to always hear it from whatever someone's preference is.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think maybe I have a bit of an obsessive nature. You know, like I say, I mean, once I started, because I had that very broad outline of where I wanted to go, and it just meandered. You know what I mean? I'd find another fascinating fact, and then I'd have to get my characters there, in a situation where they could either influence or be influenced by it, And to be honest, I got excited because I didn't know where they were going to go next, or anything like that. Like I say, it definitely grew. And sometimes I'd be there, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, tapping away, thinking, oh, yeah, I'll finish this bit, and then something else would happen, and I'd jump onto the next bit, and I didn't want to stop there, So yeah, I think it was a bit obsessive.
Hmm. Wow, no. Sounds like it was a passion in a
Yeah,
healthy way.
it definitely became that way because, and as I said, because I didn't have a fixed narrative, if you like. Um, I allowed myself to wonder, it literally evolved over the period of writing. And strangely enough, by the time I got to 160,000 words, I thought, hang on a minute, and I still ain't got to the place where I really wanted to start it. You know what I mean? I realised my characters needed a bit of a backstory, so that's why I started researching before the event. So, and like I say, that part of it became so fascinating to me that I wanted to research that, and I wanted to tell that story,
Hmm.
you know. But like I say, it just gained more and more momentum. So yeah, and then when I realised 160,000 words, I thought it was probably a bit too much. So luckily, I was able to separate the two, and almost like making two volumes, two novels, one being a continuation of the other,
Hmm.
But to tidy up volume one, I had to nick a few chapters from volume two, to finish it off, and then had to rewrite the beginning of volume two so that it flowed seamlessly into each other,
Hmm. I love that. 60,000 words.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I thought, stop.
That's good. You didn't, it doesn't sound like you got writer's block or anything like that.
No, yeah, probably the opposite, Yeah, definitely outpouring,
Have you got like any plans for like any more books in the future?
Yeah. As I said, I'm just putting the finishing touches to volume two, and I've already contemplated a volume three. Like I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with it or not. It's just, I don't know. Like I say, it just feels like a story that needs to be told, and I find it very therapeutic.
How do you find it therapeutic? That sounds really interesting.
Part of it is just a change to what I'm doing and what I was filling my life with is sort of like a bit of a distraction. But when it comes to writing characters, I take a lot from what I see, the way that people interact with each other, and I think that's part of the psychology and all that sort of stuff. But But I think also writing a character can help me interact with other people, because you see the effect that they have on people, or for instance, the way that words have a certain impact on different people. The way that different words impact different people. Sorry, and body language, and if you can incorporate that into your characters, I think it actually makes for strong characters, and strong characters for strong narrative. I believe.
Interacting, and I know you've got a interest in like sort of psychology and sort of people as well. It
Well,
sounds like from your work is count like looking doing counselling, hypnotherapy, and even in your volunteering in addiction. Is that those things you've always been interested in? Because I know you're in like obviously software and engineering before.
no, again, I think it's like every other career move. It's been a complete change. But yeah, like I say, I started, learning about mind and psychology, and once I started learning about it, I just couldn't get enough. I mean, it's just the most complex thing in the world. It's the human brain, within that, the human mind. I mean, as I said, I couldn't get enough of it, and started doing the recognised qualifications and that, and just to give me a more structured approach to the learning, um, and the idea of volunteering came out of that, because I don't know if you're aware, but the waiting list for counsellors and that is tremendous. 2-3 years sometimes. So, and I thought, well, got the knowledge, got the qualifications. Where could I apply that to the best place? And I thought, if I, like I say, to do counselling, to help people with addictions, I thought would be quite a good place to start.
Hmm.
And as with the hypnotherapy, um, during my research and studies, found that hypnotherapy was a really good method for breaking the cycle of addiction. But to be honest, I learned that to purely to complement the other modalities that I learned for the counselling. And the more I studied, the more a lot of the modern therapists like Marissa Pierce,
Yeah, Marissa Peer.
with her, with her RTT,
Hmm.
awful lot of hypnotherapy. So I thought it's another string to my bow, another service I can offer to help, and I really enjoyed that too. I become a bit obsessive again. But next thing I want to learn is EMDR.
Hmm.
The eye movement desensitization reprocessing, because let's face it, at the root of most addiction there is trauma. So I thought the MDR treatment would actually help people deal with the trauma, and that would help them with their addictions too.
Hmm. Hmm. Some very great modalities.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the more you learn, the more um, there is to learn, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, for instance, if you look at, Aaron Cook, or Beck, yeah, Aaron Beck and Carl Rogers, sorry, guy did person-centered therapy, and that was developed into CBT by Aaron Beck. So every door you open leads into something else, so it seems like never ending. But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. As you can probably tell, I'm quite passionate about it. Love the idea of just learning continuously.
Learning. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of just followed or always like maybe a curious kind of like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go down that road and
Oh,
not
absolutely.
not thinking it too much, but just trying new things, maybe.
And and like I say, if it does interest me, I tend to go in feet first. you
Mm.
know, but yeah, and as I said, with the charity and that, I'm facilitating meetings, and, group, peer group meetings and stuff like that, which again is fascinating. It's all about that human interaction, and again, that can relate back to the characters that you describe, and developing the characters can also aid you with the way that you communicate with people,
Mm. Like that. Do you ever find for yourself there's any kind of, because you've outlined a lot of like passion for like learning and curiosity and like helping people, and therefore you're giving that. Do you experience any like any like stress from it at all, or when you're doing it, or kind of sometimes hard to unwind? I just want.
uh, to be honest, that was the one thing I was a bit worried about,
Hmm.
taking on too much emotional baggage.
Hmm.
Um, but within the counselling psychotherapy situation, like I say, the level 5 is what they call a supervision level, yeah, which means that they are the counsellors who counsel the counsellors, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean.
Yeah.
And well, especially within the UK, it's mandatory that every counsellor must have a set number of hours of supervision, each month, to speak about cases, talk about their own emotions and stuff like that. But it's
Hmm.
also recommended that regularly they take on their own counselling to be able to offload, if you like. Yeah, it was a worry for me because I I believe I'm a very empathetic person, and I do tend to take the worries of the world on my shoulders, but so far, not at all. I'm just seem very motivated, just to help people, and it does actually make me feel really good about it. Well, about myself, I suppose. That sounds a bit mercenary, doesn't it? But it does, it does feel good to be able to, make a little bit of difference in somebody's life,
Hmm.
especially if they're struggling.
Sounds like you got a mix of things going on. Like, wow, I know you've got a mix of things going on with all this, like helping people with the counselling, the hypnotherapy tools, and
Yeah.
um, the addiction and things like that, and the writing. Are those kind of your main like passions and hobbies, or is there anything else you kind of mix in with that as well?
Love taking my dogs out. And as you say, some of the settings around here in Cornwall are gorgeous. I mean, they love it too. Now, to be honest, I think people are my passion. As I said, we're all social animals after all, aren't we? I mean, we need that connections with other people. And to be honest, that is something I used to worry a lot about. Because with so much time spent on screens, it's a very isolating pastime, if you like. And to be honest, I have two sons, and between them, they've got nine grand. I have nine grandchildren,
Wow.
so my grandchildren don't have any problem socializing, but some of their friends that they get they're only children, and they really don't know how to speak to other people. It's so sad. You know, turn around and tell you that they got 500 friends. I said, yeah, but none you've ever met. They're all social media friends and things like that. Yeah, so I think in a way, being able to, for me, I think, having that social connection, I think is very important.
Mm.
And I do think it is for, well, it should be as a species, really, but we find that we are becoming much more isolated.
Mm.
You know,
I'm with you. I totally agree. I think someone who speaks to people on Zoom all over the world, I do make sure I have that time to hang out with the guys or my friends or family and a girlfriend in like person as well. It's just like
Yeah.
really, it's
But, but,
important that interaction. Mm.
but things like Zoom and that are, I would say, much better because you do get that kind of physical interaction, but it's not. Um,
Mm.
it's different when you meet person to
Yeah.
person,
Mm.
but at least on Zoom, you get that, you know, physical feedback, if you like. And one of the facts is that I learned that only 10% of our communication is verbal. It's the words that we say.
Mm.
The rest made up of body language, tone, pitch, all that sort of stuff. But and I think that's why sometimes when you're speaking to somebody on the phone, it can become quite frustrating because you don't feel you're getting your point across.
Mm.
But I do find that as I said, Zoom, Teams. I mean, they're great platforms because they do give you that element, of proper contact.
Mm. Yeah, for me, in person energy, that's needed for me as a person as well. Like
Absolutely.
those things can help. Yeah, definitely. It's that in person, whether I'm playing football on a Saturday and chilling afterwards, or family time, or
Yeah.
romantic with my girlfriend or whatever. It's just those in person things.
Yeah, skin on skin.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. No, I love that. Um, with the like addiction stuff you're like doing, does it tend to be all kinds of addictions?
Yeah. Yeah.
I spoke to various guests about different types of addictions and
Yeah.
things like that.
The charity, I'm volunteering for do all addictions
Mm.
right across the board, which is becoming challenging because there seems to be a new addiction declared as an addiction sort of every week, isn't there? Like, it's like, gaming is now an addiction, a
Mm.
recognized addiction, and shopping, apparently. Shopping's an addiction as well.
Mm.
But I've often thought that, credit is an addiction,
Mm.
which, can land people in so much mire because, it's so easy to get. It's so difficult to pay back
Mm.
once you get into that, deep state. But yeah, I was going to say the charity I volunteer for, do um, cater for all addictions. But to be honest, most of it is still sort of like alcohol, drugs,
Mm.
bit of gambling.
Yeah.
But like I say, they're not mutually exclusive.
Mm.
That has a drink problem can also have a drug addiction or a gambling
Mm.
addiction. Tend to feed off each other. As I said earlier, a lot of addiction is actually rooted in trauma. And they're just coping mechanisms that people use to cope with the trauma until they become out of hand and then they become part of the problem rather than the solution.
Mm.
So, yeah, as I say, I do tend to rub it on a bit.
Mm. But it sounds like with tools like RTT and hypnotherapy
Yeah, yeah.
can be really useful for helping work through kind of those addictions and maybe causes behind it.
Absolutely. To be honest, I've just embarked. Well, I say embarked. I mean, the qualifications. They did the basic modalities like your CBT, person centered, and you know Alders and Gestalt and all that sort of stuff. But the thing is, nobody ever fits into a square box, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
So I think at the end of the day, you have to be eclectic. You have to take bits of this and bits of that because nobody fits any specific modality.
Mm.
You know, it, So as I said, hypnotherapy may work really well with a particular client, but it may be totally unsuitable for somebody else. I mean, one of the guidelines is anybody suffering from any forms of psychosis should not be hypnotized. It's simple as that. But but a lot of people find it very, very relaxing, stress relieving. And stress is underneath it all one of the biggest killers of our time. Because and especially the way that we live our lives with prolonged stress or chronic stress, the body creates chemicals like adrenaline, cortisol, and stuff like that, to support the fight, flight, stress responses. But with chronic stress, it doesn't get reabsorbed and it just ends up being toxins in your body, really, poisoning yourself. Hence why if you can relieve stress and like meditation, mindfulness, things like that, they do enhance people's lives because it just mellows them out, really, and returns them to the parasympathetic nervous system rather than the sympathetic nervous system. So, but as I said, I do think, you need to have an eclectic view. We take a bit of this, a bit of that, because they all have benefits. They all excel in different things. So I think having a broad knowledge is much better than box fitting somebody, because people don't fit in the boxes.
So not a like one size fits all approach. It's everyone's different, right?
Absolutely, because we are all individuals. I do think it's fascinating, the human condition, because, and if you think, I know we're kind of like, going off topic a bit, but, everybody's reality is different. What's real for you is not real for me, and change one thing and your reality changes, so.
But from all your understanding of this, it sounds like you put that in the book quite a lot, like with these characters and how they interact with each other.
Yeah. Definitely. And as I said, people. Sorry, I did put it on silent.
That's all right.
So I don't know where it's coming through. Yeah. As I was saying, analysing how and why people interact with each other. What are their motivations? What are their goals? Yeah. How do they see themselves in comparison to others? Are they accepting of others or judgmental? So very much so. Yeah. Never really thought about it like that, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely is. The characters are definitely influenced by my understanding of psychology. Yeah, definitely.
Psychology and your research as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By, as I said, finding the different situations to put my characters into these historical situations, is interesting because you actually do refine your characters. You have to think of what are their motivations, why would they be there, what is their journey, what's their experiences, like take them to that position and have them act in that certain way, so it has been really interesting, and I do like the idea of not knowing where they're going to go next, so I haven't just done blanket research. I'm sort of like, researching up to a certain point, and then I'll take the story up to that sort of point, and then research a bit more, there's that incident, or I'd like him to go there, but so like I say, they as characters are changing all the time because they're experiencing different things which are shaping who the people they are. Or characters. You have to remember the characters, they're not real, and they're not real. Yeah, but definitely it does shape how they become.
But Quite an adventure, like writing it. So, like you've been talking about, um, yeah, and make it into two volumes is really cool as well. Like with
Yeah.
160,000 words. Kenneth, I'd love to know, as we kind of like wrap up today, where is the best place for the listener to find out about your work if they like,
Yeah.
and your book as well.
Like I say, it is available on Amazon. Um, you know, Waterstone, Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
lots of different places. I have my own website, you know, so if you just Google my name, uh, Kenneth Bryce, an author, take you directly to it. It's a bit more about me and that on there, and you can actually purchase the book directly from the website, like, as well. But yeah, yeah. Sorry if I've gone on a bit.
No, no, really, really great. I love what you shared and your perspective on like what you've learned from like human behavior, psychology, but also but also like your process of writing a book and your enjoyment through that. So I think
Yeah,
finding either your book and your website, whether it's on Amazon or on your website, it's going to be really awesome for the listener. So for the listener, you can find Kenneth's book linked on Amazon and the other stores in the show notes below, and also Kenneth's website, Kenneth Bryce, linked in the show note as well. So you can find out more about his website and himself and find his amazing work. So, Kenneth, I want to say a big thank you for coming on today. I've enjoyed talking to you and hearing all the work you've been doing and all these adventures in your life.
thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to leave your heart, not with fear.